Welcome to a peaceful journey through the world of bees. As you settle in and let your body relax, we'll explore these remarkable creatures together, gently, without rush. Take a deep breath, and let's begin. Bees belong to an ancient order of insects called Hymenoptera. This scientific name comes from Greek words meaning membrane and wing, referring to the delicate, translucent wings these insects possess. Within this order, bees share their lineage with ants and wasps, all of them connected through millions of years of evolution. Imagine, if you will, a vast family tree stretching back through time, with bees occupying their own special branch, perfectly adapted to the work they do. The diversity of bees is truly extraordinary. There are over 20,000 described species of bees worldwide. 20,000. That's more species than all mammals and birds combined. Each one unique, each one shaped by the environment it calls home. Some are as small as a grain of rice, while others are as large as your thumb. Some are covered in soft, golden fuzz, while others gleam with metallic blues and greens. 20,000 different solutions to the art of being a bee. These remarkable insects have spread across almost the entire planet. Bees are found on every continent except Antarctica. From tropical rainforests to desert oases, from mountain meadows to suburban gardens, bees have made their homes in virtually every terrestrial habitat Earth has to offer. Picture them now, in their countless forms, visiting flowers under the midnight sun of the Arctic summer, or gathering pollen in the warm deserts of Africa, each perfectly suited to their particular corner of the world. Here's something that might surprise you as you drift towards sleep. Most bee species are actually solitary rather than social. While we often think of bees living in great hives and colonies, the truth is quite different. The vast majority of bee species live alone. A single female builds her own nest, gathers her own provisions, lays her own eggs, and never meets her offspring. There's something peaceful about this, each bee going about her work independently, without the complexity of colony life. The honeybees we're most familiar with are, in fact, quite unusual. Honeybees are one of a small group of bees that make and store surplus honey. Most bees collect just enough food for their immediate needs or to provision their offspring. But honeybees have evolved to do something more. They gather nectar throughout the warm months and transform it into concentrated honey, storing it away for times when flowers aren't blooming. It's this ability to create and save surplus food that has allowed them to maintain their colonies through winter, and has made them so valuable to humans throughout history. The most common honeybee, the one that has spread around the world alongside human agriculture, has a beautiful scientific name. The Western honeybee's scientific name is Apis mellifera. Apis comes from the Latin word for bee, while mellifera means honey-bearing. Though there's a gentle irony here, the name actually means honey carrier rather than honeymaker, a small mistake made by the scientist who first named them. But the name has endured. Apis mellifera, the honey bearer, working tirelessly across the globe. Bees undergo a remarkable transformation during their lives. Bees are holometabolous insects, meaning they undergo complete metamorphosis. This is one of nature's most dramatic transformations. The insect that emerges from the egg looks nothing like the adult it will become. Instead, it must pass through entirely different forms, each stage a chapter in the story of becoming. This transformation follows a precise pattern. Their life cycle includes 4 distinct stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. First comes the tiny egg, carefully placed in a specially prepared cell. From this egg emerges a larva, and then comes the hidden stage of the pupa, where the magic truly happens. Finally, the adult bee breaks free, ready to take its place in the world. For stages, for transformations, like a story unfolding in chapters. The larval stage is perhaps the strangest to imagine. Bee larvae are legless grubs that look very different from adults. If you saw a bee larva, you might not recognize it as a bee at all. Picture a small, pale, C-shaped grub, soft and segmented, no legs, no wings, no antennae, just a simple eating machine, designed for only one purpose, to grow. It lies curled in its cell, fed by adult bees, getting larger day by day. There's something pure about this stage of life, nothing to do but eat and grow, no responsibilities, just peaceful development. The beginning of transformation happens quickly. Honeybee eggs hatch into larvae in about 3 days. 3 days from the moment the queen lays an egg until a tiny larva breaks through the shell. In that brief span of time, cells are dividing, structures are forming, and life is organizing itself according to ancient patterns written in DNA. And when that larva emerges, it's ready for the next chapter, ready to be fed and cared for, ready to grow into whatever it's meant to become. And so we've taken our first gentle steps into the world of bees. We've learned what they are, where they come from, how they fit into the grand tapestry of life. As you continue to relax, let these images settle in your mind. 20,000 species spreading across the earth, most living solitary lives, a special few creating golden honey, all of them transforming from egg to grub to adult through the ancient magic of metamorphosis. The journey from egg to adult bee is a precisely timed miracle of nature. Different types of bees develop at different speeds, each following its own internal clock, each emerging exactly when it's meant to. Let's explore these gentle rhythms of transformation. Honeybee queens develop from egg to adult in about 16 days. 16 days. That's all it takes for a tiny egg, barely visible to the human eye, to become a fully formed queen bee, ready to lead a colony of thousands. During those 16 days, she passes through all her transformations in the darkness of her special queen cell, fed royal jelly by devoted workers, growing larger and stronger until the moment she's ready to emerge and take her place as the mother of the hive. Worker honeybees, the backbone of every colony, take a bit longer. Worker honeybees develop in about 21 days. 21 days from egg to emergence. These are the bees we see visiting flowers, the ones who perform all the countless tasks that keep a colony alive. They're smaller than queens, perfectly adapted for their roles as foragers, nurses, cleaners, and guards. For 3 weeks, they develop in their cells, preparing for their brief but industrious lives. The males of the colony have their own timeline. Male honeybees, called drones, take about 24 days to develop. Drones are the gentle giants of the hive, larger and bulkier than workers, with enormous eyes designed to spot queens during mating flights. They take the longest to develop, perhaps because of their size, or perhaps because their role requires no urgency. They exist for one primary purpose: to mate with queens from other colonies, ensuring genetic diversity flows through the population. The way bees determine the sex of their offspring is fascinating and unique. Bees are haplodiploid, which means fertilized eggs become females and unfertilized eggs become males. This might seem strange at first, but it's an elegant system. Female bees carry 2 sets of chromosomes, one from each parent, while males carry only 1 set from their mother. This means drones have a mother but no father in the traditional sense, while worker bees and queens have both parents. It's a genetic arrangement that has shaped bee societies in profound ways. This system gives female bees remarkable control over reproduction. Female bees can store sperm and choose whether to fertilize each egg. A queen or a solitary female can decide, egg by egg, whether to produce a daughter or a son. She carries within her body a small reservoir of sperm, received during her mating flights, and as each egg passes through her reproductive tract, she can release sperm to fertilize it, or not. It's a choice made thousands of times, an ongoing decision about the composition of the next generation. As seasons change, so do the strategies bees use to survive. Many solitary and bumblebees in temperate climates overwinter as adults or pupae. When autumn arrives and flowers fade, these bees prepare for the long sleep of winter. Some dig into the soil as adults, entering a state of dormancy called diapause. Others remain as pupae, protected in their cocoons, waiting for the warmth of spring to trigger their final transformation. They time their development to match the seasons, emerging when the world is ready to support them. The timing of emergence is not random. In many species, males emerge from nests earlier than females. This phenomenon, called protandry, ensures that males are ready and waiting when females appear. Picture a warm spring morning, the first male bees crawling from their nests, their bodies still soft and fresh, waiting near the nest entrances for their sisters to emerge days later. It's a pattern repeated across countless species, a timing refined by millions of years of evolution. For solitary bees, nest provisioning is a lonely but devoted task. Many solitary bees provision each brood cell with pollen and nectar before sealing it. A female works alone, making trip after trip to flowers, gathering pollen grain by grain, carrying nectar drop by drop. She forms each load into a small loaf at the back of a cell, then lays a single egg on top of it. This is her gift to her offspring, food for the entire larval stage, prepared with care even though she'll never meet the bee that will consume it. Once the cell is provisioned and the egg is laid, the larva's fate is sealed, literally. The larva consumes the stored food and pupates inside the sealed cell. Alone in the darkness, the larva eats steadily through the pollen loaf, growing larger day by day. When the food is gone and the larva has reached its full size, it begins its transformation into a pupa. All of this happens in complete isolation, sealed behind a wall of mud or plant resin, following instincts encoded in its genes. The bee larva has one more task before pupation. A gland beneath the larva's mouth secretes liquid that hardens into silk for a cocoon. Thread by thread, the larva spins a protective layer around itself. This silk cocoon will cushion it during metamorphosis, keeping it safe while its body breaks down and reforms. It's a final act of self-care before the profound changes begin, a soft shelter for transformation. A quiet chamber where one form of life dissolves and another takes shape. Within the sealed darkness of the brood cell, hidden from the world, one of nature's most remarkable transformations unfolds. Let us imagine what happens in that private chamber, where a larva becomes something entirely new. The bee pupa is enclosed in a semi-transparent cocoon. If we could peek inside the sealed cell, we would see this ghostly form, the pupa visible through the thin silk walls of its cocoon. The pupa doesn't move. It doesn't eat. It exists in a state of profound reorganization. Inside that still form, tissues are dissolving and reforming. Wings are growing. Compound eyes are developing. The simple body of the larva is being rebuilt into the complex body of an adult bee, with all its intricate parts and specialized structures. The moment of emergence is a struggle and a triumph. When metamorphosis is complete, the adult bee splits its pupal skin and emerges. First, it must break through the cocoon it spun as a larva. Then it must chew through the cell cap, whether that's made of wax, mud, or leaf material. The new adult emerges soft and pale, its body still hardening, its wings still crumpled and damp. Over the next hours, it will pump fluid into its wings to expand them, and its exoskeleton will darken and harden. But it has arrived, transformed, ready for the life ahead. Social bees have mastered the art of continuous production. Social bee colonies can produce multiple generations of workers in one season. Unlike solitary bees, which produce one generation per year, social colonies keep reproducing as long as resources are available. A queen lays eggs continuously throughout spring and summer, and workers emerge in waves, replacing those that have died, expanding the workforce when flowers are abundant. It's a renewable population, constantly refreshing itself. In some parts of the world, the cycle never stops. Some tropical bees may have several generations per year without a dormant stage. In regions where flowers bloom year-round and temperatures remain warm, there's no need for winter dormancy. Queens lay eggs continuously, and new bees emerge month after month. These tropical colonies exist in a state of perpetual activity, never entering the quiet rest that temperate colonies require. Colony lifespans vary as dramatically as bee species themselves. Some colonies last for multiple years, while others last only a single season. Honeybee colonies, when healthy, can persist for decades, with new queens replacing old ones through a process called supersedure. Bumblebee colonies, by contrast, last only from spring to autumn. Each strategy is perfectly suited to its species and environment, some building lasting civilizations, others burning bright and brief. The founding of a social bee colony is an act of solitary courage. In social bees, a queen typically founds the nest and raises the first workers alone. She must build the first cells, lay the first eggs, forage for the first provisions, and care for the first larvae all by herself. She's both queen and worker during these early days, doing everything necessary to bring her first children into the world. It's exhausting work, and many queens fail, but those who succeed become the mothers of thousands. Once those first workers emerge, the dynamic changes completely. Once workers emerge, the queen mainly remains in the nest laying eggs. Her foraging days are over. Her building days are finished. Now she becomes a specialized egg-laying machine, focusing all her energy on reproduction. The workers take over every other task: foraging, building, cleaning, feeding. The queen moves through the nest, inspecting cells, laying eggs in those that are ready, attended always by a retinue of workers who feed and groom her. The structure of honeybee society is precisely defined. Honeybee societies have 3 castes: queen, workers, and drones. Each caste is genetically female or male, but beyond that, each is shaped by diet and development time into a specialist. Queens are females fed royal jelly throughout their development, becoming large and reproductively capable. Workers are females fed less rich food, developing smaller bodies and mostly non-functional ovaries. Drones are males, raised in larger cells, eating their fill of food provided by workers. 3 forms, 3 roles, 1 society. The workers are the true heart of the colony. Workers perform most colony tasks, including foraging and brood care. They are the nurses who feed larvae, the architects who build comb, the foragers who gather nectar and pollen, the guards who defend the entrance, the undertakers who remove the dead, the heaters and coolers who regulate temperature, the cleaners who maintain hygiene. Every task necessary for colony survival, except laying fertilized eggs, is performed by workers. They are the colony's hands, its legs, its sensory organs, its immune system. Perhaps most fascinating of all, a worker's role is not fixed at emergence. The roles of worker honeybees change as they age. A worker begins life performing simple tasks, and as she matures, she takes on more complex and dangerous work. This age-based division of labor, called temporal polytheism, means the colony automatically adjusts its workforce to its needs. Young bees, safe inside the hive, perform nursing duties. Old bees, nearing the end of their lives anyway, take on the risky job of foraging. It's an elegant system, ensuring the colony's most valuable members, the young workers with long futures ahead, are kept safe inside. A worker bee's life is a journey through roles, each stage bringing new responsibilities, new skills, new contributions to the colony. Let's follow this progression, from emergence to the final flights. The first days are spent in humble service. Young workers begin by cleaning honeycomb cells. These newly emerged bees, still soft and fuzzy, move through the comb inspecting cells, removing debris, polishing the walls with their mouths. They prepare cells to receive new eggs, ensuring everything is clean and ready. It's simple work, but essential. A colony cannot function without clean cells, and this is how young workers begin their service, with mops and brooms made of mouthparts and legs. As they mature, their role grows more complex. Middle-aged workers process nectar and feed larvae. They receive nectar from returning foragers, taking it mouth to mouth, then move to empty cells where they deposit it. They add enzymes from their own bodies that will begin converting the nectar to honey. They also tend the larvae, visiting each grub repeatedly throughout the day, feeding it the appropriate food for its age and caste. Royal jelly for the youngest larvae, a mixture of pollen and honey for older worker larvae. It's demanding work, requiring constant attention and precise judgment. At a certain age, something remarkable happens inside their bodies. When their wax glands activate, workers build and repair comb. Small glands on the underside of their abdomens begin secreting tiny flakes of beeswax. The workers harvest these flakes with their legs, chew them to make them pliable, and sculpt them into the hexagonal cells that form the comb. Building comb is one of the most skilled tasks in the hive. The workers must create cells of precise size and shape, tilted at just the right angle to prevent honey from dripping out, arranged in patterns that maximize storage while minimizing wax use. The result is an engineering marvel, strong, efficient, and beautiful. Some workers are assigned to security duties. Some workers serve as guards at the hive entrance. These bees station themselves at the entrance, antennae extended, ready to challenge anything that approaches. They can recognize their nestmates by scent, and they stop unfamiliar bees or other insects from entering. A guard's job is to be suspicious, to investigate, and when necessary, to defend. They are the colony's first line of defense, standing watch while others work. Finally, when workers reach their mature phase, they take on the riskiest work of all. Older workers primarily forage for nectar, pollen, water, and plant resins. These are the bees we see visiting flowers, the ones flying from bloom to bloom in gardens and fields. Foraging is dangerous. There are predators to avoid, whether to endure, long distances to fly. Many foragers never return, lost to birds, spiders, storms, or simple exhaustion. But by the time a worker becomes a forager, she's already contributed weeks of work inside the hive. If she dies while foraging, younger workers are ready to take her place. Workers do more than gather food and build comb, they also maintain the environment. Workers regulate brood nest temperature through heating and cooling behaviors. The developing brood, the eggs, larvae, and pupae, are extremely sensitive to temperature. Too cold, and development slows or stops. Too hot, and the brood can be damaged or killed. So workers constantly monitor and adjust, using their bodies as both thermometers and thermostats. The target temperature is remarkably precise. Honeybees keep the brood area around 33 to 36 degrees Celsius. This narrow range is maintained even when outside temperatures vary by dozens of degrees. Whether it's freezing or sweltering outside, the brood nest stays at that perfect temperature, creating a stable environment for development. It's a testament to the colony's collective ability to control its environment. When the nest is too cold, workers become living furnaces. They warm brood using metabolic heat and thoracic muscle contractions. Workers press their bodies against cells containing brood, then rapidly vibrate their flight muscles without actually moving their wings. This generates heat, just like shivering in mammals. A cluster of workers can raise the temperature of brood cells by several degrees, keeping the developing bees warm even on cold nights. When the nest is too hot, workers employ cooling strategies. To cool the hive, workers fan their wings to circulate air. They position themselves at the entrance and along corridors in the nest, beating their wings rapidly to create currents that draw hot air out and pull cooler air in. Stand near a hive on a hot day and you can hear the collective hum of hundreds of workers fanning, working together to create a ventilation system. Sometimes fanning isn't enough. When temperatures soar, workers employ evaporative cooling. They also collect water and evaporate it to cool and humidify the hive. Foragers make special trips to collect water from streams, ponds, or puddles. They return and distribute tiny droplets throughout the hive, sometimes spreading water on the comb itself. As this water evaporates, it absorbs heat, cooling the nest just as sweat cools human skin. It's an elegant solution, using the physics of evaporation to regulate temperature. Inside the hive, everything is regulation and response, a constant dance of adjustment to maintain perfect conditions for the colony's most precious resource, its developing brood. Humidity is as important as temperature. Nectar evaporation helps maintain brood humidity at about 30 to 50%. As workers process nectar into honey, water evaporates into the air of the hive. This moisture, combined with metabolic water from the bees themselves, creates the humid environment necessary for proper brood development. Eggs and young larvae need moisture to prevent desiccation. The colony maintains this humidity naturally, simply by doing its work. The care given to brood is constant and intimate. Inside the hive, workers constantly inspect brood cells with their antennae. They can't see into the cells very well, their compound eyes aren't designed for close-up work in dim light. Instead, they use their antennae, those remarkable sensory organs that can detect chemicals, temperature, humidity, texture, and more. A worker extends her antennae into a cell, gathering information about the larva inside. Is it the right temperature? Is it hungry? Is it developing normally? All these questions answered by touch and smell. Based on what they detect, workers adjust their behavior. They adjust feeding and heating based on what they detect. If a larva seems too cool, workers may press against its cell to warm it. If it seems hungry, they'll feed it. If a cell feels too dry, they might add a drop of water. If development seems abnormal, they might remove the larva entirely. Each worker is both sensor and actor, constantly gathering information and responding appropriately. The hive has no central brain making decisions, just thousands of individuals following simple rules based on local conditions. Workers also care for each other. Workers groom one another to remove parasites such as mites. Grooming is a social behavior with practical benefits. A worker uses her legs and mouthparts to clean the body of a nestmate, removing dust, debris, and crucially, parasites. Varroa mites, one of the honeybee's most serious pests, can sometimes be removed through grooming. It's mutual aid, each bee helping others stay clean and healthy, strengthening the colony through care. Sometimes a worker needs help she can't request verbally. Some workers perform a grooming invitation dance to request cleaning. A bee that feels mites or debris on parts of her body she can't reach will perform a distinctive behavior, shaking her body, raising a leg, moving in a particular way. Other workers recognize this signal and respond by grooming her. It's a request and a response, communication through movement. The hive must be defended, and workers are ready to give their lives if necessary. Honeybees guard the hive and defend it from intruders. Predators want the honey, the brood, or the bees themselves. Bears, skunks, mice, wax moths, robber bees from other colonies, all pose threats. Guards are vigilant, and when danger appears, they attack. The defense of the colony is absolute. Workers don't hesitate or calculate odds. If the colony is threatened, they defend it. But defense comes at a terrible price for the defender. Workers can sting only once because their barbed stinger tears away. Unlike wasps or queen bees, whose smooth stingers can be withdrawn and used repeatedly, a worker honeybee's stinger has backward-facing barbs. When she stings, these barbs catch in the victim's flesh. As she tries to fly away, the stinger tears from her abdomen, along with the venom sac and part of her digestive tract. The stinger continues pumping venom even after it's been torn away, driven by its own muscles. The worker's sacrifice is complete. After stinging, a worker soon dies. The injury is too severe. She's given everything in defense of her sisters, her mother, her home. It's the ultimate act of self-sacrifice, and it happens thousands of times in nature, wherever bees defend their nests from threats. Each worker makes this sacrifice knowing, in whatever way a bee knows things, that her death serves the colony. The act of stinging sends a signal that spreads through the hive. Alarm pheromones released during a sting alert other workers. When the stinger tears away, it releases a chemical signal, a scent of danger that says attack here. Other workers detect this pheromone and are drawn to defend the same spot. This is why bee stings often come in multiples. The first sting calls others to join the defense. The pheromone creates a positive feedback loop, escalating the defensive response. The reason only female bees can sting is rooted in evolutionary history. Bee stingers are modified ovipositors, which is why only females can sting. An ovipositor is an egg-laying organ, and in the ancestors of bees, wasps, and ants, this organ was adapted for defense and prey paralysis. Male bees, having no need to lay eggs, never had ovipositors and so never developed stingers. Queens have stingers too, but they use them primarily to kill rival queens, not to defend against external threats. Only workers regularly sting in defense, their modified egg layers transformed into weapons of last resort. The relationship between bees and flowers is one of nature's most beautiful partnerships, a story written over millions of years in pollen and nectar, in color and scent and form. Bees and flowering plants have co-evolved, shaping each other's traits. Long ago, when the first flowering plants appeared, they needed ways to move pollen from flower to flower. Wind pollination works, but it's inefficient, scattering pollen randomly. Some plants began offering rewards to insects in exchange for pollination services, and bees, descended from predatory wasps, became specialists in collecting these rewards. Over countless generations, bees shaped flowers and flowers shaped bees, each adapting to the other in an endless dance of mutual influence. The most obvious reward that flowers offer is sweetness. Many flowers evolved nectar as a reward for bees. Nectar is essentially sugar water, produced by special glands called nectaries, usually hidden at the base of the flower. It costs the plant energy to produce, but that cost is repaid many times over through pollination. A bee visiting for nectar inadvertently carries pollen from flower to flower, enabling plants to reproduce. The more attractive the nectar, the more visits from bees, the more successful the pollination. It's a transaction that benefits both parties. As flowers evolved different shapes, bees evolved to match them. Some flowers developed long tubes, and bees evolved longer tongues to reach them. Picture a columbine flower with its long nectar spurs, or a tube-shaped honeysuckle blossom. These flowers are inaccessible to most insects, but certain bees have tongues long enough to reach the nectar at the bottom. This creates a specialized relationship. The flower gets pollinated by a bee that's perfectly adapted to its shape, and the bee gets access to nectar that competitors can't reach. It's like a lock and key, co-evolved together. Bees have become masters at collecting pollen, developing specialized structures for the task. Bees have specialized scopal hairs for collecting pollen. These aren't ordinary hairs. They're branched and feathered, designed to trap and hold pollen grains. As a bee moves through a flower, pollen dusts onto her body, and these specialized hairs grab and hold it. The bee deliberately grooms pollen from her body and packs it into these scopal structures, creating visible loads that she'll carry back to her nest. The location of these structures varies among bee families. In many species, these hairs are on the hind legs. Bees in the families Apidae, Megachilidae, and others concentrate their pollen-collecting hairs on their back legs, creating what look like thick, fuzzy leg warmers. A bee with full pollen baskets is a beautiful sight, her legs enlarged with bulging masses of colorful pollen. Other bees take a different approach. In others, they are located beneath the abdomen. Bees in the family Megachilidae, including mason bees and leafcutter bees, carry pollen on a specialized structure called a scopa on the underside of their abdomen. Watch these bees fly, and you'll see them carrying pollen on their bellies rather than their legs. It's simply a different solution to the same problem. Honeybees and their close relatives have evolved particularly sophisticated pollen-carrying structures. Honeybees have pollen baskets, called corbiculae, on their hind legs. A corbicula isn't just a patch of hair, it's a smooth, slightly concave area on the outer surface of the hind tibia, fringed with curved hairs that hold the pollen in place. The bee moistens pollen with nectar and packs it into these baskets, creating compact loads. A forager returning with full pollen baskets is a sign of successful foraging. These form visible pollen loads as bees forage. The loads can be different colors depending on what flowers the bee visited: bright yellow from dandelions, orange from poppies, red from horse chestnut, gray from willow. Watching bees return to their hive, you can see the diversity of flowers they're visiting, each load a little capsule of color, each bee a collector of a landscape. The way bees gather nectar is equally specialized. Bees lap up nectar with mouthparts adapted for liquid feeding. Their tongue, or glossa, is elongated and covered with fine hairs. The bee extends this tongue into the nectar, and through capillary action and a pumping motion of the head, draws the liquid up into her mouth and then into her honey stomach, a special storage organ separate from her digestive stomach. She can carry significant amounts of nectar, up to her own body weight when her honey stomach is full. Some bees have evolved a remarkable technique for accessing certain types of pollen. Some bees buzz pollinate by vibrating flowers to release tightly held pollen. Certain flowers, including tomatoes, blueberries, and many wildflowers, hold their pollen inside tube-shaped anthers with only a small opening at the tip. The pollen doesn't fall out easily. Bumblebees and some other bees have learned to grasp these flowers and vibrate their flight muscles at a specific frequency, causing the pollen to shoot out in a small cloud. It's like playing an instrument. The bee adjusts her vibration to the flower's resonant frequency, and the pollen is released. This technique, called buzz pollination or sonication, allows these bees to access resources that many other pollinators cannot. Once nectar and pollen return to the nest, the work of storage and preservation begins, a process that will sustain the colony through lean times and feed the next generation. Pollen must be packed efficiently into storage cells. Foragers compact pollen into storage cells in a behavior called pollen stamping. A forager returning with pollen loads scrapes them off her legs and drops them into a cell. Then house bees, the younger workers who stay inside the nest, take over. They climb into the cell and use their heads to pack the pollen down, tamping it firmly, adding a bit of honey and nectar to help preserve it. This packed pollen, called bee bread, will ferment slightly, making its nutrients more accessible. It's the colony's protein source, essential for feeding larvae and producing royal jelly. Nectar undergoes an even more dramatic transformation. Stored nectar is ripened into honey through evaporation and enzyme action. When foragers bring nectar back to the hive, it contains about 70 to 80% water. Honey, the final product, contains less than 20% water. Workers achieve this concentration through a two-part process. First, they add enzymes from their salivary glands, which break down complex sugars into simpler ones. Second, they spread the nectar in thin layers in cells and fan it to promote evaporation. Over days, the nectar thickens and sweetens, gradually becoming honey. When it reaches the right consistency, workers cap the cell with wax, sealing in their creation. The value of honey extends beyond immediate nutrition. Honey serves as a long-term energy store for the colony. Unlike fresh nectar, which would spoil, honey is shelf-stable, lasting for years if properly sealed. This allows honeybee colonies to survive winter, when no flowers bloom and foraging is impossible. The colony clusters around its honey stores, eating slowly through the cold months, waiting for spring. Honey is stored summer, concentrated sunlight and flower nectar preserved for the dark season. Sharing food is central to colony life. Mouth-to-mouth food transfer, called trophallaxis, distributes nutrients and pheromones. A forager returning with nectar passes it to a house bee. That house bee might pass it to another bee, and another, spreading the food throughout the colony. But trophallaxis does more than distribute nutrition. It also spreads pheromones, chemical messages from the queen and from other workers, keeping all members of the colony chemically synchronized. Through trophallaxis, the colony becomes unified, each bee tasting the same chemical signatures, each connected to the whole. Communication in the hive goes far beyond pheromones. Bees communicate colony needs through movements and dances. The most famous example is the waggle dance, used by honeybees to direct nestmates to good flower patches. A returning forager performs a figure-8 dance on the vertical comb, the angle and duration of the waggle portion encoding the direction and distance to the flowers. Other bees follow her movements, sometimes touching her with their antennae, learning the location. Then they fly out and, following her instructions, find the same patch. It's symbolic communication, an abstract representation of location, something once thought unique to humans. Let's shift now to consider where bees make their homes, for not all bees build hives in hollow trees. Many native bees nest in the ground in bare or lightly vegetated soil. Ground nesting bees, which include most bee species, excavate tunnels and chambers in the earth. A female digs a main tunnel, then branches off into side chambers, each of which will hold one egg and its food provisions. You might notice small piles of loose soil in your garden or yard, each marking the entrance to a bee's nest. These ground nesters prefer bare soil. Too much vegetation makes digging difficult and may harbor predators. Some bees prefer to work with wood. Carpenter bees nest in dead wood by tunneling into it. Large carpenter bees, with their shiny black bodies and powerful mandibles, chew through dead wood to create nest tunnels. The tunnels run with the grain of the wood, sometimes extending for many inches. Inside, the female creates a series of cells, provisioning each one, laying an egg, and sealing it with a partition of chewed wood pulp. The entrance holes are perfectly round, and if you find wood with these distinctive holes, you've found a carpenter bee nest. Mason bees are opportunists, using what's available. Mason bees use pre-existing cavities and seal brood cells with mud. They nest in hollow plant stems, abandoned beetle burrows, holes in wood, even gaps in buildings. A female finds a suitable cavity, provisions it with pollen and nectar, lays an egg, then builds a mud wall to seal that cell. She continues this process, creating a row of cells within the cavity, each separated by a mud partition. The final cell is followed by a thick mud plug at the entrance. Mason bees don't excavate, they furnish existing spaces, which is why they readily use artificial nest boxes. Bumblebees create societies, but on a different scale than honeybees. Bumblebees form smaller annual colonies than honeybees. Where a honeybee colony might contain 50,000 workers, a bumblebee colony typically has only a few hundred. They nest in various locations, abandoned rodent burrows, grass tussocks, cavities under sheds. The nest is less organized than a honeybee hive, with irregular wax cells clustered together. But like honeybees, bumblebees are social, with a queen and workers cooperating to raise brood and gather food. Each spring, the cycle begins anew for bumblebees. Bumblebee colonies are typically founded each spring by a single overwintered queen. She emerges from underground on the first warm days, having survived the winter alone while all her children died. She searches for a nest site, builds a few wax cells, lays eggs, and cares for the first larvae herself. Once those first workers emerge, they take over the foraging and brood care, and the colony grows throughout the summer. In autumn, the colony produces new queens and males, which mate. Then the entire colony dies except for the newly mated queens, who burrow into the soil to sleep through winter and begin the cycle again next spring. Across the vast diversity of bee species, we find a spectrum of strategies for gathering food, interacting with plants, and navigating the world. Some bees have focused their entire lifestyle on particular plants. Some bees specialize on a narrow range of host plants. These specialist bees, also called oligolectic bees, collect pollen from only one plant species or one group of closely related species. For example, squash bees visit only squash, pumpkin, and gourd flowers. Sunflower bees specialize on sunflowers. These specialists have evolved alongside their host plants, timing their emergence to match bloom times, adapting their behavior and sometimes even their body shape to efficiently gather pollen from their chosen flowers. It's a strategy of precision and dependence. When the right flowers are blooming, specialist bees thrive, but they have no backup plan if those flowers fail. Other bees take a more flexible approach. Others are generalists and visit many plant species. Most bees are generalists, called polylectic bees, gathering pollen and nectar from diverse sources. A generalist bee might visit roses in the morning, clover at noon, and asters in the evening, adapting to whatever is blooming and productive. This flexibility is an advantage. If one flower type is scarce, there are always alternatives. Generalists may be less efficient at gathering from any particular flower, but their adaptability makes them successful across varied and changing landscapes. Some bees have peculiar attractions. Sweat bees are often attracted to human sweat for its salts. These small, often metallic-colored bees will land on human skin to lap up perspiration. They're not aggressive, they're just thirsty for the sodium and other minerals in sweat. Bees need salts and minerals just as humans do, and sweat is a convenient source. A sweat bee on your arm is simply drinking, performing her own version of foraging, finding minerals where she can. Bees have evolved many ways to avoid being eaten. Many bee species display bright warning coloration to deter predators. Yellow and black stripes, vivid orange or red markings, metallic colors, these are advertisements of danger. Birds and other predators learn to associate these patterns with painful stings or bad taste, and they avoid bees as a result. Some harmless insects have evolved to mimic bees, borrowing their warning colors for protection. This is Batesian mimicry, a harmless fly pretending to be a dangerous bee, benefiting from the bee's fearsome reputation. But beyond their fascinating biology and behavior, bees hold a more profound significance. Bees are among the most important pollinators of wild plants and crops. It's difficult to overstate their ecological importance. Bees pollinate somewhere between 70 and 90% of flowering plant species. They enable these plants to produce fruits and seeds, ensuring the next generation. Without bees, many plant populations would collapse, unable to reproduce effectively. The stability of ecosystems, the diversity of plant communities, the productivity of agriculture, all depend heavily on the work of bees. One species stands out for its global impact. Honeybees are considered the world's most important pollinator species in many ecosystems. This is partly because they're social and form large colonies, creating a workforce of thousands of foragers. It's also because they're generalists, visiting a huge variety of flowers. And it's because humans have spread them worldwide, managing hives for crop pollination. In many agricultural areas, honeybees perform the majority of pollination services, supporting orchards, berry fields, and vegetable crops. Even in wild ecosystems, honeybees can be dominant. In some regions, honeybees account for the majority of pollinator visits to native plants. Studies of flower visitation often find that introduced honeybees make up 50, 60, even 70% of all pollinator visits. This can be controversial. Some worry that honeybees compete with native pollinators. Others see them as filling a gap in pollinator services. Regardless, their numerical dominance in many landscapes is undeniable. The fundamental service bees provide is enabling plant reproduction. Bee pollination enables the reproduction of countless plant species. When a bee visits a flower, pollen adheres to her body. When she visits the next flower, some of that pollen rubs off on the stigma, the female reproductive structure. If the pollen comes from another individual plant of the same species, fertilization can occur. The flower develops into a fruit, the ovules become seeds, and a new generation is created. Without this transfer of pollen, many plants would produce no seeds at all. But bees do more than just enable reproduction, they improve it. Cross-pollination by bees increases genetic diversity in plant populations. When pollen moves from one plant to another, it mixes genetic material from different individuals. The resulting seeds carry combinations of traits from both parents, creating offspring that are genetically diverse. This diversity is the raw material of evolution and adaptation. Genetic diversity is crucial for long-term survival. Greater genetic diversity helps plants adapt to pests, diseases, and climate change. In a genetically diverse population, some individuals will have traits that help them resist a new disease. Some will tolerate drought better. Some will thrive in slightly warmer temperatures. When conditions change, and they always do, diverse populations have better odds of containing individuals that can survive and reproduce. Bees, by mixing pollen among plants, create and maintain this diversity, strengthening plant populations against future challenges. The influence of bees extends far beyond individual flowers and plants, rippling outward through ecosystems in ways both obvious and subtle, shaping the living world at every scale. The genetic diversity that bees help create has ecosystem-level effects. Bee-driven genetic diversity increases ecosystem resilience. An ecosystem with genetically diverse plant populations is better able to withstand disturbances like fires, floods, droughts, or disease outbreaks. Different genetic variants respond differently to stress, so when one variant struggles, others may thrive. This redundancy, this built-in variability, acts as insurance for the ecosystem. And bees, through their pollination services, are the agents of this diversity, the carriers of genetic variation from plant to plant. Pollinated plants form the foundation of ecosystem structure. Pollinated plants help maintain forests, grasslands, and wetlands. Most flowering trees require insect pollination. Many grasses produce seeds only when pollinated. Wetland wildflowers depend on bees for reproduction. These pollinated plants are not just decorative, they are structural elements of ecosystems, creating habitat, stabilizing soil, regulating water flow. Forests need trees, grasslands need diverse grasses and forbs, wetlands need emergent vegetation. Bees, by pollinating these plants, maintain the very architecture of natural communities. These plant communities provide essential planetary services. These ecosystems provide oxygen and regulate climate. Through photosynthesis, plants absorb carbon dioxide and release oxygen. A single mature tree might produce enough oxygen for 2 people for a year. Forests, prairies, and wetlands also regulate climate by absorbing and storing carbon, cooling the air through evapotranspiration, and influencing rainfall patterns. These services are possible only because plants exist in abundance and diversity, and that abundance and diversity depends substantially on pollination. Carbon storage by plants is increasingly recognized as critical. Plants pollinated by bees act as carbon sinks. As plants grow, they incorporate carbon from atmospheric carbon dioxide into their tissues, wood, leaves, roots, seeds. Some of this carbon returns to the atmosphere when plants decay, but much is stored long-term in wood or soil. Forests are massive carbon reservoirs. Grasslands store carbon underground in extensive root systems. By enabling plants to reproduce and maintain healthy populations, bees indirectly support these carbon storage processes, contributing to climate regulation. Many of our most important crops depend on bee pollination. Many food crops rely on bee pollination for optimal yields. Apples, almonds, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, melons, squash, pumpkins, strawberries, sunflowers, the list goes on and on. Some crops, like almonds, are almost entirely dependent on bee pollination. Others, like tomatoes, benefit from buzz pollination by bumblebees. Without bees, crop yields would plummet, food would become scarce and expensive, and human nutrition would suffer. We rarely think about it when we eat, but bees are hidden contributors to nearly every meal that includes fruits, vegetables, or nuts. The plants that bees pollinate support entire food webs. Bee-pollinated plants support herbivores and the predators above them. A flowering meadow, full of bee-pollinated wildflowers, produces seeds and foliage that feed insects, birds, and mammals. These herbivores become food for predators, spiders, birds, foxes, hawks. Remove the pollinators, and the flowers fail to produce seeds. Remove the seeds, and herbivore populations crash. Remove the herbivores, and predators starve. Bees sit near the base of this tower of interactions, holding it up with their pollination services. Healthy plant communities, maintained through pollination, protect the soil itself. By supporting plant communities, bees help maintain soil health. Plant roots stabilize soil, preventing erosion. Plant litter decomposes and adds organic matter, improving soil structure and fertility. Living roots partner with fungi and bacteria, creating vibrant underground communities. All of this depends on plants being present in diversity and abundance. Bees contribute to soil health indirectly but significantly, by ensuring plants can reproduce and maintain robust populations. Erosion is a serious threat to land productivity and water quality. Bees help prevent erosion by sustaining vegetation cover. Bare soil is vulnerable. Rain washes it away, wind blows it away. But soil covered by vegetation is protected. Plant canopies intercept rain, reducing its impact. Roots bind soil particles together. Even dead plant material on the surface acts as a protective mulch. By pollinating the plants that create this cover, bees help prevent the loss of topsoil, that precious, slow-forming resource on which agriculture and natural ecosystems depend. The benefits cascade in multiple directions. Bee-supported plant communities contribute to clean air and water. Plants filter pollutants from the air. Wetland plants absorb excess nutrients from water, preventing algal blooms. Forest vegetation regulates water flow, preventing floods and maintaining stream flows during dry periods. Riparian plants shade streams, keeping water cool for fish. All of these ecosystem services depend on healthy, diverse plant communities, the kind of communities that thrive when bees are abundant and active. The loss of bees can trigger devastating consequences. Declines in bee populations can trigger cascading biodiversity losses. When bee populations shrink, pollination services decline. Fewer flowers are pollinated, so fewer seeds are produced. Plant populations shrink and become less diverse. Animals that depend on those plants for food or habitat decline in turn. Their predators decline. The entire web of relationships begins to unravel. It's not instantaneous, it's a slow degradation, hard to notice year by year, but profound over decades. And at the center of this decline is often the loss of pollinators, including bees. We arrive now at the present moment, where bees face challenges unprecedented in their long history, and where human choices will determine their future, and ours. The loss of wild spaces is perhaps the greatest threat. Habitat destruction is a major driver of bee declines. When forests are cleared, prairies are plowed, and wildlands are paved, bees lose their nesting sites and their food sources. Many ground nesting bees need bare soil in specific locations. Cavity nesting bees need dead wood and hollow stems. All bees need diverse flowers blooming from spring through fall. Habitat destruction eliminates these resources, leaving bees with nowhere to nest and nothing to eat. It's not that bees go extinct immediately, it's that populations shrink and fragment, becoming vulnerable to other threats. Chemical exposure adds another layer of stress. Pesticide exposure is another significant threat. Many pesticides, particularly neonicotinoids and organophosphates, are highly toxic to bees. Some kill bees directly on contact. Others cause sublethal effects, impaired navigation, reduced foraging efficiency, compromised immune systems, disrupted learning and memory. Bees encounter pesticides on crops, on flowering weeds in agricultural fields, even in gardens and parks. The chemicals enter their bodies through contact, ingestion of contaminated pollen and nectar, or even through water. Reducing pesticide use, choosing less toxic alternatives, and avoiding application during bloom times can all help protect bees. The climate itself is shifting in ways that challenge bees. Climate change alters flowering times and habitats. As temperatures rise, spring arrives earlier, and flowering times shift. If bees emerge at their usual time but flowers have already bloomed and faded, there's a mismatch, and bees starve. Climate change also shifts habitat ranges. Plants and bees that once thrived in certain areas may find those areas too hot or too dry. Some bees may be able to move to new areas, tracking suitable climates northward or upward in elevation. Others, restricted by specific habitat needs or unable to disperse quickly enough, may disappear from their historical ranges. Diseases and parasites, some natural and some introduced, weaken colonies and populations. Parasites and diseases, such as varroa mites, also harm bees. Varroa mites are external parasites that feed on honeybee hemolymph, the insect equivalent of blood. They weaken bees directly through feeding, and they also transmit viruses, causing a complex of problems called parasitic mite syndrome. Varroa is a major cause of honeybee colony losses worldwide. Other bees face their own parasites and diseases, fungal infections, microsporidian parasites, viral diseases. When bees are stressed by habitat loss, pesticides, and climate change, they become more vulnerable to these biological threats. But there are actions we can take, individually and collectively, to help bees. Planting bee-friendly flowers can support bee populations. Even a small garden planted with native wildflowers or other bee-attracting plants can make a difference. Bees need nectar and pollen from spring through fall, so choose plants that bloom in sequence, providing continuous resources. Native plants are often best because local bees have evolved alongside them. Avoid double-flowered cultivars, which often produce no pollen or nectar. Create habitat by leaving patches of bare soil for ground nesters and preserving dead wood for cavity nesters. Every garden can become a small sanctuary. Reducing chemical use is another powerful action. Reducing pesticide use is recommended to protect bees. This applies to agriculture, landscaping, and home gardens. Choose organic methods when possible. Use integrated pest management, which emphasizes prevention and non-chemical controls. If pesticides are necessary, select those that are less toxic to bees, apply them in the evening when bees are not active, and never spray blooming flowers. Even seemingly minor changes, multiplied across millions of acres and gardens, can significantly reduce bee exposure to harmful chemicals. Agriculture can be practiced in ways that support rather than harm bees. Sustainable agricultural practices benefit bees and other pollinators. This includes maintaining wildflower strips along field edges, reducing tillage to protect ground nesting bees, planting cover crops that provide forage, and creating habitat corridors. Diversified farming systems with crop rotation and integrated livestock tend to support more pollinators than monocultures. Some farmers are even partnering with beekeepers or installing native bee habitat, recognizing that supporting pollinators improves their crop yields while also supporting biodiversity. Even cities can become havens for bees. Urban beekeeping can support local pollinators. Keeping honeybees in cities has become popular, and when done responsibly, it can increase pollinator abundance in urban areas. But it's important to also support native bees, which may be more effective pollinators of native plants and don't require human management. Urban planners and gardeners can incorporate pollinator-friendly landscaping into parks, street medians, green roofs, and even small balcony gardens. Cities, despite their concrete and steel, can support surprising diversity of bees if we make conscious choices about plantings and habitat. Bees have always been more than just insects to humans. Bees contribute to human culture through symbolism and agriculture-based traditions. For thousands of years, bees have appeared in art, literature, religion, and folklore. They symbolize industry, cooperation, sweetness, and sometimes divine inspiration. Beekeeping traditions are woven into many cultures, from ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs to medieval European manuscripts to modern agricultural fairs. Honey has been used as food, medicine, and ceremonial offering. Beeswax has provided light through candles for millennia. Our relationship with bees is ancient and deep, part of what it means to be human in a world of flowering plants. Looking forward, the stakes could not be higher. Protecting bees helps safeguard food security, biodiversity, and ecosystem stability for future generations. Every action taken to support bees ripples outward, helping wild plants reproduce, maintaining habitats for countless other species, supporting agricultural productivity, preserving the beauty and diversity of the natural world. The challenges are real and serious, but they are not insurmountable. Through conscious choices about how we manage land, grow food, design cities, and interact with nature, we can create a world where bees thrive. And in protecting them, we protect ourselves, for our fates are intertwined with theirs, bound together by flowers and pollen, by sweetness and survival. by the ancient partnership that makes life on Earth so wonderfully abundant. And so we come to the end of our journey through the world of bees. We've learned about their bodies and life cycles, their societies and behaviors, their vital role in ecosystems, and the challenges they face. As you settle into sleep, let these thoughts rest gently in your mind. 20,000 species, each finding its way, flowers and bees co-evolving for millions of years, colonies as complex as cities, solitary bees working in quiet independence, pollen and nectar transformed into life, ecosystems sustained by tiny wings and tireless work. Rest now. The bees will continue their ancient work. And perhaps, when you wake, you'll see them with new eyes, these small creatures carrying the world on their backs, one flower at a time. Sleep well.